Welcome back to Eduwell. In today's episode, we are going to talk about how digital clutter is real and exhausting. The constant pings, pop-ups, and messages can feel like pressure to perform. But here's your reminder. You are allowed to pause, delay, or even decline. In today's episode, we're exploring how digital communication affects us as teachers. We'll talk about the pressure to always be on, the emotional toll of alerts, and strategies for reclaiming control and even eliminating what doesn't serve you. Let's dive into the well. Welcome to the Eduwell Podcast, a show created for, by, and with teachers. I'm Alex.
And I'm Chelsea. Our goal is to share insights and connect with fellow teachers on how to thrive both personally and professionally.
Join us as we dive deep into the well of information filled with relatable tips, practical discussions, and ideas that go way beyond the classroom walls. Let's be well
and do well together. Okay, Alex, so today we are talking about the always-on culture when it comes to digital communication. I don't know about you, but this bugs me a little bit. I have a little bit of trouble with digital communication. What are your thoughts?
What are my thoughts? I like it when it's making my life easier, and I don't like it when it's making my life way harder. So when it helps me to do work independently of anyone else, like booking hotels, doing banking, being able to be efficient in communication during work hours. I like that piece of it. However, when it becomes a bombardment of information and asks of me, and it creates a lot of extra work that might go beyond what normally would have been on my plate, that's where I start to have a problem with it. Or when I'm expected to be available well beyond when, I would have been available 20 years ago in my career as a teacher. And we're talking in the context of teaching. Like there's a whole bunch of personal life stuff too we could get into, but.
Well, that's going to be in here a little bit too, I think, because the digital communication is always there. But I'm going to go back to what you were saying about enjoying it. Yeah, you know what? I do enjoy it. I love digital communication. I do like that I can take care of things on my own time and I can check things on my own time. But I think that just growing up without the texts and all of that messaging, and it makes me think about the past and think about the fact that there was a time when not everyone could send me a message or a text or an email at any time that they wanted to. There were boundaries in a household, there were boundaries at work. And so I guess that takes a lot of getting used to, and it can also creep up on you and just become mentally exhausting. So that is why I say that it bugs me a little bit, even though I am aware that I can completely set my own boundaries with it.
You can, and it's a hard thing to do because you might end up with a little bit of FOMO, or you might end up feeling as though you're not working as hard as other people are if they are responding or checking. I mean, there's all that, just all those things that happen as a result that, is part of a really big discussion. This is another one of those topics that, in discussing it, we will think of other topics. Like when you were sharing earlier, I was thinking about your Monday morning memo. It's a form of communication. It helps you out. And in theory, it helps the receivers out. So to me, that's a really good form of digital communication. But another word popped into my head, and that was privacy. And, when you're trying to enjoy time with people or just time alone, and you're accessible all the time, it does kind of erode that feeling of privacy, depending on whether you respond or not. It's very interesting. And I have a lot of thoughts and a lot of feelings about it.
Okay, before we get into the thoughts and feelings, which we are going to get into very soon, let's go over the sort of expectations that we have with digital communication, or we're feeling with digital communication at work. These days, teachers are often expected to check email before school, during planning time, and even throughout the day. Now, yes, email is an efficient form of communication, but it can also be a distraction from what we are doing.
It is, and honestly, depending on the type of day that I'm having in my class, the expectation of checking that email while teaching is not reasonable. And we've said this before on the podcast, Chelsea. If there's a message that is very important, I would never put it into an email. I might follow up with an email, but I would always go and say it to the person. So I would never depend on email to send an important message that needed to be read now type thing, because a teacher can't be checking their email throughout the day necessarily. I mean, depends on what you're doing, right?
Yes, it does. And there's also those notifications that are coming from all kinds of directions. You've got your school platform, you've got parent apps if you're using those, messages from admin, Google Classroom alerts. Oh, you know what I remember? When I was first learning to use Google Classroom, I didn't realize you could set a due date and a time for an assignment. And a student had come to school one day and said, you sent me a message at midnight that my assignment was to be completed by that time. And I was pretty much horrified. I was like, there's no way I sent you a message at midnight. I've been sleeping for 2 hours. That wasn't me. And then I went into, the platform and figured out that it was automatically sending messages. That's a problem.
It's a huge problem for the students and the
can get out
teachers.
Of control.
Yeah.
And the parents.
I mean, I anytime when I used to use Google Classroom and I would post, I was posting under assignment, even though it was like a beginning, middle, end. There was no assignment attached. It was something that we were doing in class and there wasn't even a hand-in portion. But it made it look like the students owed a whole bunch of assignments and they didn't. And so a parent could go in and think, oh, my kid's not doing any work. We've talked about this before. And I remember us saying on the podcast, Chelsea, that like the amount of notifications a student gets if they're in, let's say, high school or they have a rotary system, it becomes unavoidable. Like you would just not want to look at it ever because it's constant reminders of dates and reminders of assignments that are, coming due. So I think that we really need to look at that. And it's not necessarily a critique specifically of that platform, but it's a critique of the fact that sometimes we have so many different platforms that we're using or apps that we're using. We're not streamlined and we end up completely inundated. So I think over time, these things will shift and change.
But in the meantime, all of these alerts and notifications, et cetera, can have an emotional toll. So that's our second topic. Let's talk about what every ping really costs you. Alerts are not just noise. They create that feeling of urgency or guilt or decision fatigue. So let's get into the feelings that we are feeling and let's think about the feelings that the people on the other end receiving the messages are also feeling, because that's another side of it.
I know for me, if I send a text and I'm waiting for a response, let's say it's a social text or it's me seeking information, and then I receive that information, I'm not going to lie to you, I 100% get that dopamine hit. And on a day where I've sent out a lot of, requests or questions or things where I'm awaiting someone else's response, I become like a compulsive checker. I'll be checking a lot. And so there's a real time kill that happens. And I often think about the people that I'm sitting with right at the staff room table or after school or, when I'm having a conversation with a family member. And right in the middle of that, I don't know why, I pick up my phone to see if that person has responded. And either they haven't, and I just put it right back down, or I get that text and I just completely drop out. And I'm sure that the people around me, that it's not good for my relationships. I can tell you that with confidence, but it ends up being a mental drain, a time drain, and an emotional drain because it does damage relationships. And you could also damage relationships if you never answer your texts, throwing that out there too, or emails.
Yeah, there's that side of it too. But that's why those feelings creep up. You think you have to answer everything right away because you don't want to come across as rude, or you don't want to seem like what the person is saying to you is not important. However, if you're sitting with someone and you're checking that, then you're saying to that person face to face that you're not as important as this conversation on my phone. But ultimately, I think the digital notifications can always wait. That's something I work on daily because It is like when someone's checking their phone and you're having a conversation with them, it can make you feel less important.
See, so I'm thinking about this in the context of, let's say, school. So then I'm thinking parents, I'm thinking admin, I'm thinking colleagues. And then I'm also thinking about students, let's say. And I think that key to this to avoid, because I don't believe we should be extending our school day by responding. And I think we have to establish ways that we want to communicate. And I can only speak for myself. And my most comfortable way of communicating, and I've said this before on the podcast, is via telephone so that I can answer supplemental questions and I'm not having back and forths. But one thing with communication with students is establishing right away at the beginning of the school year what your boundaries are, so you don't have to disappoint them by not responding when they expect you to, because they will expect you to respond, and really establishing that early on so you're preventing that awkward later conversation. I also think we're teaching students really great lessons in boundaries, and they're walking into a world that's going to be even more digital than we have right now. So I worry a lot, if I'm going to seem rude, if someone is emailing me at, hours that are well beyond what I'm comfortable with and I don't respond. I do worry about that. I mean, and also there's something called schedule send. And so I really appreciate it when people use that.
Okay, so that pretty much moves us into the final segment of the episode, which is managing that digital communication. So it's important to think about how you're making the other person feel when you're sending messages outside of work hours. I was listening to a podcast. It was a leadership podcast, and this person was talking about how they were a really hard worker and they did a lot of their work at night and they would send out all of this information at night. And then after some time, their employees or colleagues, or I'm not sure whoever it was, said to them, when you send this information to me, at 8:00 at night after work hours, it makes me feel like I need to respond. And the person in the leadership position from this podcast was grateful that that person had said that to them, because they didn't realize it. They thought, they were just working hard. They're doing their job when they can do their job. And there's nothing wrong with that. But to have that awareness that it could be putting pressure on the other people that you're sending the information to is really important to think about. And that is why we can always use schedule send. Now, I think this is an amazing feature, and even on the text now, right? Scheduling text.
Love it.
I finally got my phone updated, so I can now do that. So happy about that. Had to clear a bunch of space to get there though. But people need to do their work when they need to do their work. And that goes for a lot of teachers too. They just prefer to sit down at night and go through some work.
Okay, but so like in the story that you just shared, that manager was, I'm grateful that you told me, thank you, reflective, made a decision so that the people that he or she is working with, don't feel that way. And, in a case whereby, let's say you say something and it's like, well, I work when I work, don't check. And that's the attitude that is received on the other end. In that case, I think that's where you need to, then it's an actionable piece really for you to stand firm and to really double down. And I often have been guilty of thinking, well, really, is it a big deal? If I send this at this time and I'm interrupting, it's work related. But for some people, for some of us, for some of you, there's multiple people who could be texting you and thinking, well, I'm going to try not to, but it's not a big deal for me to do it once. So that's, it's just something to be incredibly mindful of. So if you're someone who's sending it, think about it. If you're someone who's receiving it, and especially if you've communicated those boundaries and they're not being respected, then you need to really double and triple down on that, because that's your time.
Yeah, the other side of that situation is you are in control of your device. So people might be sending things out at all times of the day and the night, but you decide when you check it, and you decide whether you want to keep the red flag on your email telling you how many emails you have. I mean, I turn that right off, so it doesn't really bother me. I'm not going to check the email after hours. I'll check it when I get to school during work hours. That's how I operate. And that alleviates me from getting those mind mosquitoes. Because if I'm checking my work email at 9:00 at night, there might be something in there that's going to weigh on me when I'm trying to get my sleep. And then that's affecting my well-being. So it is up to us ultimately.
Well, and depending on how you have things set up on your phone, like I don't have any like pings for those types of anything. Well, I also don't have my work email on my phone, but I don't have pings on my phone. And every once in a while I'll go in if I'm waiting for something from somebody and it's really important, I might turn the ping on. But funny story. And those pings, they're disruptive. They give you that kind of like ding, like a little zap to your body. I was sleeping the other day and it was 2 a.m. and I was in a deep sleep. And a friend of mine had sent me a bunch of photos from her amazing trip. And she sent me, I think, 40 photos. And it was on a different app. And I had not touched the notifications because really I hadn't been using it quite that much, just for little bits of communication. My phone vibrated like total buzz and went zzz and dinged like 40 times. And it got me up and I could not get back to sleep. I mean, yeah, just a little story to share. Maybe the person is listening and they're going to have a little laugh over that.
I guess so. Well, you didn't turn your phone off, so they're laughing at you.
I should have turned my phone completely off. Yeah, those noises, they're interruptions.
Yes, but they can be controlled.
Okay, so everything that we just said is very true, but let's think of some things that we could do right now in the next 10 to 20 minutes to reset, reclaim that time by getting rid of some of those pings. I'm sorry, I'm putting you on the spot, Chels.
Okay, well, literally get rid of the ping. Turn off the notifications, silence them.
Yeah, you can do that as an overall. Are you aware that you can also go into a lot of devices and change the notifications depending on the person? So I know there's a few key people in my life who I will allow my phone to make a noise because, I have a high level of responsibility within that person's life, let's say. So you can do that. What else?
That's great. And one that I learned from you was to turn on send receipts. So you can let the person know whether you've read their text message or not. And you can do that for certain people by going into your message contacts and toggling that send receipts button on or off.
You can look into your email and unsubscribe from all of the different distractions of people trying to get your attention to get you to spend money or sign up for stuff. You can either unsubscribe or you can create a new email and have all of the promotions and such going directly into that email and check it once in a while.
You can take your work email off of your phone or you can delete certain apps that are not serving you.
Yeah, I'm going to piggyback on that one. Do like a whole phone edit, go through your phone and really edit the visual clutter that exists on your phone and get rid of those apps that you don't use very often. Ooh, okay. Now we're running out of ideas. Let's see.
You can use Do Not Disturb regularly. I don't know why, but I only just started using that when I go on my walks and I'm listening to something, whereas before I would just allow the pings to come in while I was walking and it kind of bugged me. So I just started using Do Not Disturb and my walks got 10 times better.
You can make sure that you strengthen those bonds and relationships with friends, family, colleagues, so that if you do not respond right away, that they always know that they definitely matter to you. You just don't always have the time to be communicating via the electronic device. That goes a long way.
You can create communication routines by just setting times where you check your email or your notifications. That one I use and I love it.
You can make sure that you put some auto replies onto your email so that people are fully aware of what your hours are for communication.
You can also batch reply. Instead of reacting to every ping that's coming your way, set aside a time block where you reply to your notifications when you want to reply to them.
You can communicate with all the people who are communicating with you what your preferred methods of communication are, or inform them of your limited amount of use of your tech so they're not surprised when you don't respond to that email right away. And where we live, there is a policy around after hours communications to kind of solidify work-life balance. And I know for me, when that came out, it was just very affirming that I wasn't expected to, and that, work is not the only part of your life and you have to be able to turn it off. Now, I feel like I need to do a qualifier here or a disclaimer and say that there are some things that exist whereby, no, someone needs to get a hold of you. And those are serious things. And those are things whereby if it were really serious, I would expect someone to come to my door and knock on it, right? Or, find a way to contact me. But otherwise, typically it can wait. So I think that because tech is such a just central part of so many of our lives, that culturally we will respond over time and figure out what the etiquette is more and more. I mean, I know that if I phone someone of a certain age, it's off-putting, for instance, whereas if I phone someone of another age, it's an expectation. Like there's kind of like unwritten rules around tech use. And I think more and more we'll figure out what those etiquette pieces are, and hopefully people will follow them. And if they don't, that we enforce our own personal boundaries.
Yeah, or that it's just going to change and be what it is, because maybe it is a generational thing where we're sitting here going, oh, these pings, they can bug me so much. But I feel like they don't bug my kids at all. Like my kids will have 100 notifications on their phone and it will not faze them. Maybe it's just an us thing.
Yeah, but that's all fun stuff. I'm going to say that this episode, we're talking a little bit more about work. And, you know, when I'm done my work day and I've put the final check mark on, I'm not marking, but like check mark on the to-do list, let's say, of things that I would like to get done, I'm done. And you're right. As teachers, there are times where, you know, I'll be working at night or on the weekends, and that's my concern. That's something that I'm going to, you know, run. But, you know, if you're finding that you're doing work that you wouldn't have done 20 years ago because you're more easily accessible after hours, it's something definitely to look at. Expectation inflation. It's a real thing. Creeps up on you, and it becomes, this is the concern. Instead of it being something that, you know, you have the option to do, it can become an obligation or something that is genuinely expected of you. So putting in those parameters, I think it's protecting your time, but it's also protecting the future and other people that are coming after us in the workforce, so that they're not, you know, back into a day where they're expected to work into late evenings, et cetera, et cetera.
Yep, we have to be aware of that expectation inflation. We don't want our well to overflow so much so that we can't get it under control. So let's always keep that in mind. And with that, let's get into the takeaways.
1, you don't have to be on all the time. Just because someone sends you something doesn't mean you need to reply right away.
2, your peace matters more than your ping. Emotional boundaries are just as essential as time-based ones.
And number 3, elimination is often more powerful than management. Every app, message, or platform you let go of is a space reclaimed for focus, presence, and rest. Oh, I'm going to check my phone. Just got a buzz. Just kidding. I thought that was funny. Thanks for listening to the Eduwell podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please share it with a friend, subscribe, and leave a positive review. It helps others to find us.
Follow us on Instagram and Pinterest to help spread the word. For more inspiration, tips, and book recommendations, just head to the show notes and join the Eduwell newsletter today. Until next time, be well
and do well.